Good evening, everyone, and welcome back once again to Red Pill 78. I am the Corruption Detector, and you are here on my YouTube channel. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. I've got just a couple of quick stories I want to go over. First of all, we had some tweets from Friday that caused quite a bit of stir. A whole conga line of U.S. Air Force Hercs flying in pattern formation, all labeled outlaw. Now, there was a lot of different theories about this, but it turns out we've got an explanation. Reporting here from Zero Hedge is Tyler Durden. Large-scale U.S. Air Force war drill over Nevada, simulated forcible entry maneuver, war preparations. Dozens of U.S. Air Force warplanes have hit the skies en masse under cover of night over the American Southwest for the Joint Forcible Entry Exercise, or JFEX, December 8th, reported the Drive. The large-scale air mobility exercise simulated forcible entry capabilities by the U.S. Air Force of enemy territory with dozens of transport planes, fighter jets, and electronic warfare aircraft. The first report of a massive military mobilization came from a social media account called AC Chandler Cody, who allegedly shows videos of 26 Lockheed C-130 Hercules preparing for takeoff at an undisclosed location at 8:47 p.m. About 38 minutes later, Civ Mil Air reported 17 C-130s over Texas, headed for a region near the Area 51 Air Base in Lincoln County, Nevada. Saw a lot of chatter about this on the chans, about the fact that it was over Area 51. People were speculating if maybe these guys were searching for a rogue UFO. According to one Twitter user, there could have been as many as 38 warplanes participating in the JFEX. Another Twitter user showed the C-130s flying over Canyon de Chelly National Monument, a vast park in northeastern Arizona, around 11:13 p.m. Twitter accounts at Aircraft Spots spotted multiple C-17As with thug call signs are en route to march ARB from the Nevada desert as part of JFEX. At this same time last year, social media was flooded with videos of lights filling up the sky as strings of C-17s and C-130s crossed the U.S. on their way primarily to the Nellis Test and Training Range in desolate southern Nevada. This unique large force employment exercise is among the most complex drills the U.S. Air Force executes, and it combines assets of all types, including fighters, surveillance aircraft, electronic warfare platforms, and throngs of ground troops and equipment that are dropped into or dropped off in simulated enemy territory, said the Drive. Here is what the JFEX looked like a few years ago during a daytime exercise. Let's take a look real quick. Heck yeah. Now, the Drive also points out that the Nellis Test and Training Range was very active during the JFEX. There were surveillance craft from RQ-4 Global Hawks to RC-135 rivet joints orbiting around the range complex around 11:22 p.m. Pretty sweet. I can see why it would cause a stir. JFEX has become far more relevant in recent years as the U.S. has started to come to terms with the reality that winning an expeditionary fight against a peer state competitor is an increasingly dubious challenge. Anti-access and area denial strategies have left the services scrambling to adapt to having to fight an enemy over long distances and breaking open new avenues into their increasingly expansive and fortified domain. Being able to use the Pentagon's potent but limited aircraft capacity to rapidly open up new bases of operation and vectors of attack, even at very austere and remote locales, is becoming a key tenet of future combat operations. This is exactly what JFEX is all about, punching into contested territory over long distances by surprise and setting up a foothold for expanded operations, said the Drive. With massive war preparations underway, who is the U.S. Air Force planning to invade next? I think that's a valid question. Hopefully we're not planning to invade anybody else next. I don't think we need to be getting into any more skirmishes than we have already got going on. All right, so covering that little tidbit, next we've got Trump replying to Comey's testimony. Also from Zero Hedge, Trump has said that Comey told 245 lies during Friday's congressional testimony. Republican lawmakers weren't the only ones who were frustrated by former FBI Director James Comey's repeated refusal to answer questions or provide further details, or his assertions that he simply couldn't recall during his closed-door testimony before members of the House on Friday. Following the release of the full transcript from Comey's testimony last night, President Trump lashed out against the former FBI director, whom Trump summarily fired a few months into his administration, accusing Comey of lying when he said he couldn't remember certain details or otherwise refused to answer questions, something Comey did on the advice of a DOJ attorney 245 times during the course of his marathon testimony. Furthermore, Trump said Comey lied when he said he didn't know Christopher Steele, the former UK intelligence agent who assembled the infamous Steele dossier, and that he didn't know who had signed off on investigations into 4 unnamed Trump campaign officials. Comey was so untruthful, Trump said, that he might have set the record for the number of times a witness lied to Congress during official testimony. His testimony is the latest sign that the Russia probe is a rigged fraud launched by dishonest people who would do anything so that I would not become president, Trump was quoted as saying. They are now exposed, Trump said. Beautiful thing. I'm so glad that our POTUS is speaking out on this travesty of justice. We have a wonderful system here that can so easily be hijacked and taken advantage of. But all that's changing. And Jim Jordan weighs in and says, James Comey, I don't recall 8 times. I don't remember 71 times. I don't know 166 times. And he said he didn't know that Christopher Steele was passing information to Bruce Orr, who was giving it to the FBI. Comey is set to return for another closed-door session later this month. Well, I guess we're going to all be waiting on pins and needles to see what Lyin Jim Comey has to say in his next testimony. And lastly, for this segment, I have a story from Politico, not one of my favorite news outlets, but it does have some interesting information. This is coming out of the American Priority Conference, which was held this week. Wild theories and empty seats at CPAC-style conference for the MAGA set. Talk of QAnon, George Soros, and retarded reporters at the American Priority Conference. At the first ever Conservative Political Action Conference in 1974, California Governor Ronald Reagan addressed a ragtag group of conservative insurgents by quoting John Stuart Mill and nobly declaring, "We are indeed, and we are today, the last best hope of man on earth." My friends, we carry on that proud tradition today. At the first ever American Priority Conference on Friday morning, Anthony Scaramucci, who served a brief stint as the Trump White House's communications director, addressed a married couple from Virginia, telling them that the author of the fantastical internet conspiracy theory QAnon has been dead accurate about so many things. True. The Mooch is on the prowl. Adding, when you find out who he is, you're not going to believe it. American Priority, which brings together an impressive roster of right-wing social media agitators and Trump world notables at a Washington, D.C. hotel, was envisioned as a Trumpist answer to CPAC. In reality, the 3-day conference, which convened on Thursday, has been rife with conspiracy theorists, logical snafus, and empty seats. It may also be the future of Republican politics. Right, not likely, Politico. The right's turning into a coalition of less of an ideological movement, said conference co-founder Ali Alexander, a Republican operative and Twitter influencer who co-founded the conference but did not take an active role in organizing it. Rather than organize around belief in the tenets of conservatism, like free markets and traditional family values, American Priority seeks to unite anyone who supports American nationalism and opposes establishment elites. In practice, this means supporters of President Donald Trump. Yes, sir, it does. To that end, the conference, which runs through Saturday, brings together top current and former Trump lieutenants with all sorts of controversial social media figures from whom mainstream conservatives are eager to distance themselves, only because they are playing for the other team. Bill Kristol, how'd that work out for you? On Monday, intellectual dark web philosopher Stefan Molyneux, a great guy, who often sounds off on race and IQ, tweeted a sort of white identity origin myth, writing, "My ancestors were driven out of Africa and struggled to survive winter and hunger. Now the Africans say we are privileged and thieves." I don't know exactly what he's referring to. This weekend, Molyneux shares a spot on the conference agenda with Scaramucci, as well as former Trump campaign manager Corey Lewandowski, former deputy campaign manager David Bossie, and Katrina Pearson, a senior advisor to Trump's re-election campaign. The invitation of figures such as Molyneux was not an organizational oversight so much as it was part of the conference's intended goal of defying pressure to expel fringe elements from pro-Trump politics. "It's a reflection of the real movement," Alexander said. "Damn the media optics." The event was held at the Marriott Wardman Park in Woodley Park, which has hosted several past CPAC conferences. In recent years, that conference has morphed from a modest gathering of misfits into a slick extravaganza with 10,000 plus attendees and is a must-attend event for aspiring Republican presidential candidates who now held at a resort in National Harbor, Maryland. The ascendance of Trump, who bolstered his political credibility with several CPAC appearances in the years before his presidential run, has forced CPAC to make compromises to accommodate a Republican leader who cares little for the tenets of movement conservatism. This year, the event hosted the far-right French nationalist Marine Le Pen, a Trump-style populist, and niece of National Front leader Marine Le Pen. The invitation horrified movement conservatives like Jonah Goldberg, an editor at National Review, who engaged in a Twitter spat with CPAC organizer Matt Schlapp over the invitation. Despite such accommodation, CPAC is put on by the American Conservative Union, has balked at some of Trump's most controversial supporters. Last year, it canceled a planned appearance by right-wing provocateur Milo Yiannopoulos after an old recording surfaced in which he spoke favorably of pederasty. I find it interesting that Politico is attacking Milo for his views, or that singular view, in an interview that he did several years ago, when so many of the people they support we know to be pederasts. Disgusting. All right, so basically, the only thing that I needed to cover in this article was the stuff about QAnon. So we're going to jump right down here. But some topics remained out of bounds. Dustin Nemos, good guy, an amateur conspiracy theorist, said conference organizers pulled his speaking slot after discovering he was a devotee of QAnon. Despite being pushed off the agenda, QAnon remained a fixation of many conference attendees. Even Trump's former White House communications director praised the preposterous theory, which holds that Special Counsel Robert Mueller working together in secret, Special Counsel Robert Mueller and Trump working together in secret have drawn up 50,000 sealed indictments of powerful pedophiles in order to thwart a deep state coup by Soros, the Clintons, and former President Barack Obama. That's exactly what they've been doing, boys. I don't know exactly how much Mueller has had to do with it, but I think he has had a part to play. But, of course, Politico is too stupid to realize everything that's going on. All they know is what they're being told to report by their buddies in the Mockingbird department of the CIA. At Coffee with Mooch on Friday morning, the former White House communications director, seemingly unaware of the presence of a nearby reporter, spoke glowingly of the theory as a couple from Stafford, Virginia, showed him their Q paraphernalia. Q is the otherwise anonymous author of the QAnon theory. Approached immediately afterward by Politico, Scaramucci said his comments were not referring to Q and instead referred to an earlier conversation he had with a couple about who would succeed John Kelly as Trump's chief of staff. Then Scaramucci said his comments should be taken off the record, and a conference organizer said the event was closed to the press. Moments later in the next room, Kathy Muroy, 58, and her husband Steve, 66, said they had not spoken earlier to Scaramucci about Kelly or anything else. He's talking about Q, Kathy Muroy confirmed. As leaders in the amorphous, social media-driven MAGA phenomenon continued to experiment with the traditional tools of movement building, they sometimes wield them ineptly, and the conference agenda was often overshadowed by logistical failures. Well, I'm sure that Politico is just chomping at the bit to throw this new conference under the bus, American Priority. It's the first year. Have you guys ever been involved with an event that is just starting out? The first year is always the worst. All right, all they need to do is get it going, and then next year, I'm sure they will have a much better turnout. So everybody, what do you think about this? The Mooch has confirmed QAnon. Maybe Anthony Scaramucci has inside information. Maybe not. You know, I tend to think that Anthony Scaramucci is just riding the bus like all of us. He's not involved in the administration any longer. He was only in there for a short period of time, and as Q said, the Scaramucci effect. They brought him in to get rid of the traitors. Those traitors were Reince Priebus and Sean Spicer, was it? Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. I do appreciate the support. Like, share, and subscribe. You've been listening to Red Pill 78, and I am the Corruption Detector.